Today we are going to complete a writing review. Our goals for this lesson are to review the parts of an essay, examine the example paragraphs, and then you will have time to plan your response to the provided prompt. Throughout the lesson, there will be stop signs in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and that means that you need to pause the video and fill in your note sheet or take time to read the paragraphs and highlight each part as it's directed on the slide. So the first part of our review today and the first part of your essay is the introduction paragraph. There are 4 parts to a successful introduction paragraph. That would be the hook, the bridge, the context, and finally the thesis statement. So a reminder about hooks. They should start with something that does not obviously relate to your topic, but it should work towards introducing your topic and your position. It should narrow as you go. So it should be something broad and engage the reader and draw your reader in, hook them into your essay, and it should definitely be more than 1 sentence in order to be successful. What you should not do and what you should try to avoid is using rhetorical questions. So an example would be, do you wish your school cafeteria served Chipotle? That's an example of a rhetorical question. You also want to make sure that your hooks do not have no logical connection to the context. So you want to make sure that whatever your hook is, it is related to what you're later going to talk about in your paper. And you want to make sure that your hook does not jump right into your topic or subject. You don't want to start your essay saying, this is my opinion and here's why. You want to start with something that's engaging and will draw your reader in, and then you move towards your position or answering the question later in your introduction paragraph. So there's different types of hooks. The first one that we talked about when we were reviewing for the SOL was a relatable message. So this is something that is relevant to any reader, and you can read the example where it talks about complacency and exploration and experimentation and continuing to explore things. Our second type of hook that you can consider is a basic human truth. So this would be something that's true to all humans regardless of their gender or their wealth or their religion or their culture. And so our example here is about children daydreaming about what they want to be when they grow up. That is something that every human can relate to no matter where they're from. And the last type of hook type that you could consider would be a narrative description. So this is more of like a scenario or a situation that you can consider. And our example talks about the girl in the hallway who's having a really bad day but gets a simple act of kindness that turns it around. Your bridge. This is what is going to connect your hook so that engaging relatable message or human truth or short story, it's going to connect it or bridge it to the context of your essay. So this should be brief. It should be about 1 sentence. You shouldn't mention your topic or your position. This should merely bridge your hook to your context. Now your context is your background knowledge, and you need to consider what does your audience or your reader need to know about the topic that you're writing about in order to understand your essay. Now the amount of context that you provide is going to vary depending on what you're writing about. If you're writing about something that's very specific and that people don't know a lot about, that will require more context. If you're writing about something that most people are familiar with, or that your audience should know much about, you will need less context. You want to make sure, though, that your context does not include your supporting details. Anything that you're going to use as evidence or commentary later in your essay, you do not want to include in your introduction paragraph. And then finally, probably your most important part of your intro paragraph is your thesis statement. This is the last sentence of your intro paragraph, and it should only be 1 sentence. This is where you can finally state your position or whatever your point is and provide your supporting details. And this is essentially the roadmap to your essay. As a reader and as a teacher, I should be able to look at the last sentence of your introduction paragraph, know what you're going to write about, and your supporting details. So I should know which side or what your point is going to be and how you're going to support it. So here we have a brief thesis statement wrap for you. All right, so now we have a completed intro paragraph for you. So our prompt is up at the top where it says, should students be permitted to use cell phones in classrooms? So what you should do now is read over this introduction paragraph to yourself, and then you should go through and highlight each part. So you want to highlight the hook, the bridge, the context, and the thesis. When you're finished, you can click to the next slide and see the completed example. One point that I want to point out here is the thesis statement down at the bottom. Students should not be allowed to possess cell phones while in the classroom because they serve as an impediment to learning and can lead to cheating or other negative behaviors. So as a reader, I know that this person is answering the prompt saying no, students should not be allowed to have cell phones in classroom. And their two main points are going to be that cell phones are an impediment to learning and they can lead to negative behaviors. So now getting into the body paragraphs. Your body paragraph should be in CEC format, which stands for claim, which is your topic sentence or what your paragraph is about. The evidence should be specific examples from your life or someone you know that support your claim. And then your commentary, which should be the bulk of your paragraph. And this is where you explain the significance or the so what. This is where you need to prove how your evidence supports your claim. And all the while, this should be answering your question. So here's body paragraph example number 1. So again, we're answering the same prompt, should students be permitted to use cell phones in classrooms? You want to read the paragraph, highlight each part for claim, evidence, and commentary, and then click to the next slide to see the completed example. So here you can see that we have our claim. This is the first part of our thesis statement, that students should not be permitted to use cell phones because they're an impediment to learning. We see 2 sentences with 2 pieces of evidence, and then we see the commentary, which explains how our evidence supports our claim. Here's our second body paragraph example. So again, read the paragraph, highlight the claim, the evidence, and then the commentary. This order looks a little different, so be sure that you're reading the paragraph carefully. So in this paragraph, my claim still comes first. It's answering the second point that was put forward in my thesis statement, that cell phones should not be allowed because they can lead to cheating or other negative activities. But in this case, I had a piece of evidence, and then I had commentary. Then I had another piece of evidence and another piece of commentary. Both example paragraphs are appropriate as long as you have your claim, you have evidence to support that, and a commentary that is an analysis of how that evidence supports the claim. The last part of your essay is the conclusion paragraph. This is a time that you should restate your original thesis in different words. So you want to bring up the same things that are in your thesis. So you want to state your position or your point and the supporting details, but it needs to be in different words than your thesis statement. You should not just copy and paste your thesis statement. You need to restate it. You also need to reiterate or remind your reader about your claims from your body paragraph, and this should be in one sentence. And then you want to leave your reader with some sort of final judgment and a send-off. You want them to continue to think about something or want to do something or have an action. You want to basically have them be like, so what? Why did they read this? What do you want them to do next? So here's an example of the conclusion paragraph. You want to read that and then highlight for the restated thesis, the claims from your body paragraphs, and then what the judgment or your reason to care is. Here is your highlighted conclusion paragraph. You see that this thesis is restated, so it still has the main points that students should not be allowed to have cell phones in classrooms. We see that the claims from our body paragraphs are restated in one sentence, so they talk about distractions, how they can impede learning, and then also how they can lead to cheating or negative consequences. And then there's a final judgment. So what? Why did you write this and what do you want your reader to do next? So this is an example of how you can use the tree diagram to plan your writing. I would suggest starting in the beginning with your introduction. You definitely want to include your thesis statement and then work on your bodies and then your conclusion. As you can look over, you can see that these aren't full sentences. It may not even make sense or total sense to someone else reading it, but it makes sense to me. This is how I typed out what I wanted my paragraphs to look like so that the ideas are down. I can kind of, sort everything out before I begin typing and then really spend my time when I'm composing my essay to focus on the writing and how I want it crafted. So your writing prompt that you are going to respond to is, think about how daily life, from reading to playing games to communicating with others, has changed over the last 100 years because of technology. Using specific details and examples in your response, explain how these advancements have changed daily life. So use your tree diagram. You can go back and review this or look at the PowerPoints to make sure that you have all the essential parts, and then you will be writing this response later in the week.